page or sign up at our desk in the living room. Next Sunday is Stone Soup Sunday. Our church service will feature a retelling of the well-loved Stone Soup story in which villagers come together to make enough soup for everyone, starting with just one stone. And after church, our community will make soup for our own village. Please bring and drop off in the kitchen before the service a cut-up vegetable, small pasta, beans, herbs, etc. During the service, our Stone Soup chef will simmer the vegetarian soup, and then we'll enjoy lunch together. Today, men's group will meet at noon in room 5 in the RE building across the way. Everyone is welcome. It's men's group, but we do let girls into the clubhouse. Our topic this time is media and its effect on society. Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock is our weekly Buddhist meditation on Zoom. After meditation, we will discuss the book No Nonsense Buddhism for Beginners. Zoom instructions are on the church website, hinsdaleunitarian.org, under the calendar button. Last night, the church hosted the West Suburban Play Readers. Play readers meet from time to time to read plays or enjoy readings in the audience. Last night was a great deal of fun. I got to make out with a pretty girl. So watch for announcements for our next show on News and Notes. And we've been recognizing people who make a difference in the church. Today we recognize Nancy Kranz. She is a skilled graphic designer. She's our new editor and publisher of News and Notes. Don't call her chief. And she contributes a lot to the artistic productions of this church. So if Nancy's here, she's probably downstairs working. But let's have a hand for Nancy. Now please rise in body or spirit and sing our hymn, One More Step, number 168 in the hymnal. And Pam and we have a production for our Time for All Ages. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what? I think instead, let's light the chalice first.
I wasn't going to say anything.
I know. We light the... Oh, yeah. Please do. We light the chalice to these words. May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, of freedom. Thank you all for catching those mixing of order. Look. Like to keep the edge on. And what do you say about time for all ages?
Let's do it.
All right.
Oh. It was a warm summer evening. Oh, first of all, I'm here with my friends, Mr. Dave and Reverend Suzelle, and they're going to help me tell the story today so I don't have to do it by myself. All right. It was a warm summer evening. You know, the kind where you can go outside and play all the way after dinner, the kind where you can watch the fireflies light up one by one, and 3 children, that's us, came out of their house to play.
What shall we play, Pam?
Let's play tag.
Wait, let's play hide and seek.
Tag. It's a mispronunciation of tag. I'm a small child and I have a hard time with beginnings of words.
I want to play hide and seek.
No, tag.
No, hide and seek.
Tag.
Hide and seek.
Stop. Stop it, you two. Let's vote.
Okay.
Well, all right.
I think we should have secret ballots and everything. I have a voting box.
Cool.
I got pencils.
Cool.
And I got ballots. Let's see. One for you, and one for you, and one for me.
Steve Kornacki's in the closet.
Put them in the box. Nobody knows who just what. I'm supposed to take them out of the box?
Sure. You gotta read them.
Okay, we have tag, tag, and hide and seek.
It's 2-1. Tag wins.
Okay. So the 3 of us played tag until our parents called us inside to get ready for bed. The next night, tag won again. And the night after that, tag won again. And the night after that, guess what won?
Tag.
It's not fair.
But we voted.
And that was true. We had voted. And voting is the democratic way to decide things. But it's still not fair. On the next night, when tag won again, I'd had it. I decided not to play.
Come on, Pam. I can't just play tag with Dave. It's no fun with just 2 people.
But tag isn't fun at all. I quit.
Well, instead of voting all the time, maybe we could take turns.
Take turns?
Yeah. 2 nights playing tag because there are 2 of us. And 1 night playing hide and seek because there's 1 of you.
We could start tonight. We can even play hide and seek for a couple of nights in a row because, Dave, we haven't played it yet. Do you think that's okay, Pam?
That sounds great. I'm gonna hide.
Me too. That means you're it, Suzelle.
I see Pam. I found you. to voice our vote and stand up for the things we believe in. But you know, sometimes voting just doesn't seem fair.
Thank you. Thanks for playing along with me.
Now it's time to sing our children out. As your love is with you always, as you go, as you go. That's such a beautiful song for singing the children out. It's just perfect in terms of lyrics and tune. I wish I could meet the person who wrote that song. Yes. By Suzelle Lynch.
Pardon?
I think I owe you a royalty.
Yes, that was written with the music director of Unitarian Universalist Church West, where I served up in Brookfield, Wisconsin, in the Milwaukee area for 17 and a half years. It's a long time. So I invite you now into a quieter moment. We can come back from the tag and hide and seek players we were when we were little. Come back to this place and this time and center ourselves and make ourselves comfortable in our chairs. Let your breath be easy. Let it do what it needs to do to support you. Spirit of life and love. Breath of life moving in us and through us and all around us. We give thanks this morning for the pleasure of being together in this sacred time and lovely space. We give thanks for all the things among us that are good and all the things that are a struggle too. We give thanks too for the anticipation of the holidays that are coming. We give special thanks this morning for everyone who volunteered to help make the elections safe and smooth, joyful and informed for voters. We are grateful that Tuesday's elections drew so many people out to vote, and that the elections and their aftermath unfolded without violence or voter intimidation. 104 years ago Friday, the armistice that ended World War I was signed and millions of soldiers were transformed into veterans. This morning, in honor of Veterans Day, we lift up all the veterans through the generations who have served in our nation's armed forces. We hold their family and their friends in our hearts and our prayers, those whose loved ones were sent forth into danger in all of our names, and many of whom returned home with moral injuries so deep they are forever changed in body and soul. We lift up the women, the many women who have yet to be acknowledged as veterans, and the many lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, questioning, and trans veterans who could not be out during the long period of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Those whose partners and families didn't receive the open support and care that other veterans' families did. To simply say thank you to our veterans for their service, for their sacrifice, will never be quite enough. And so we marshal our strength and our commitment and healing this morning. Strength to embrace all of our veterans, commitment to care for each and every one of them in the fullness of who they are, and healing for our country and our world, so that one day nations won't need to send people's children and siblings, spouses and friends into danger to address problems far more complex than armed conflict can solve. May we each do our part to work for justice, for it is only when justice is present that peace is made possible. Shalom, blessed be, Ashe, and Amen. And those words are actually from a prayer written by my colleague, the Reverend Kristen Grassel-Schmidt.
We enter this space bringing with us joys, concerns, challenges, and blessings. If you have something either weighing or dancing on your heart this morning, you are invited to come up to light a candle. If you wish, you can say a name, a word, or a short phrase to share your intention.
Susan, and I'm lighting a candle in honor of the marriage of a very dear friend of mine. Two very dear friends of mine, actually.
This is for my mom, who has dementia and is 92 years old.
And we light 3 final candles. One for our community that supports us through those difficulties that might be too tender to state, and the joys that we keep to ourselves. One to our world community, of which we are such a close part that it may move into the peace of which Reverend Suzelle talked. And one for this country, that we may be moving from the valley of darkness to the bright sunlit uplands. Our first reading is from Parker Palmer in Healing the Heart of Democracy. Of all the tensions we must hold in personal and political life, perhaps the most fundamental and most challenging is standing and acting with hope in the tragic gap. On one side of that gap, we see the hard realities of the world, realities that can crush our spirits and defeat our hopes. On the other side of that gap, we see the real world of possibilities, life as we know it could be because we have seen it that way. We see a world at war, but we have known moments of peace. We see racial and religious enmity, but we have known moments of unity. We see suffering caused by unjust scarcities, but we have known moments of material and spiritual sharing in which abundance was generated. Possibilities of this sort are not wishful dreams or fantasies. They are alternative realities that we have witnessed in our own lives. Nonetheless, we continue to live our lives in the tragic gap. Tragic not simply because it is heartbreaking, but because, in the classic sense of tragic, it is an eternal and inescapable feature of the human condition. This is the place called human history, where we must stand and act with hope, even though neither we nor any of our descendants will see the gap permanently closed. As we stand in this hard place, it is difficult to imagine staying there for long. Our constant temptation is to allow the tension between reality and possibility to pull us one way or the other. If we are pulled toward too much reality, we fall into corrosive cynicism. Having seen how the world works, as with its recurrent violence, we arm ourselves rather than work for peace, thus becoming part of the problem. If we are pulled toward too much possibility, we fall into irrelevant idealism, floating so far above the fray that we lose the grip on what it is, becoming part of the problem in yet another way. Cynicism and idealism sound like opposites, and yet they have the same result. Both take us out of the action by pulling us out of the tragic gap. Thus ends the reading.
Thank you, Dave. Our second reading, I pulled a switcheroo. I thought I was going to read from Reverend Sarah Voss, but this is a poem by Rosemary Watula Trommer, and it's called For When People Ask. I want a word that means okay and not okay. More than that, a word that means devastated and stunned with joy. I want a word that says, I feel it all at once. The heart is not like a songbird singing only one note at a time. It's more like a Tuvan throat singer, able to sing both a drone and simultaneously 2 or 3 harmonics high above it. A sound, the Tuvans say, that gives the impression of wind swirling among rocks. The heart understands swirl, how the churning of opposite feelings weaves through us like an insistent breeze, leads us wordlessly deeper into ourselves, blesses us with paradox, so that we might walk more openly into this world so rife with devastation, this world so rife with joy. After the end and before the beginning. When I was a kid, everybody in the neighborhood and beyond it knew my mother. Why was that? Was my mom the mother who volunteered for the PTA or brought cookies to every event or was always organizing the sports teams? Nope. Everybody knew my mom because she was always on TV. Yep, my mom was always on TV. She wasn't an actor. She wasn't the star of any show. She was the president of our local League of Women Voters. Some of you know the League, I know, and I know probably some of you have been actively involved with the League. If you're not familiar with it, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan citizens organization that's been working hard since 1920 to improve our government and engage all citizens in the decisions that impact their lives. So in my town, Saginaw, Michigan, anytime there was an election or a public policy issue that the league was offering education about, there she would be on TV, my mom. My friends liked to tease me about it. Saw your mom on TV last night. She was talking about voting again. What's so important about that? My dad says most people don't even know what they're voting for, so they should just stay home. But of course, that's why my mom was out there, registering voters, researching issues, talking on TV, so that people would know what they were voting for. Like my mom and so many other Unitarian Universalists, my orientation toward politics, toward democracy, has always been one of involvement. I was taught that achieving the true American dream, the real American dream, of justice, equity, and peace depended on my full engagement in the political process. It depended on all of us being fully engaged in the political process. Mom's standards were high. I'd be willing to bet, though, that your standards for political process are as high as hers were. I know so many UUs wrote letters and postcards to encourage voters, contributed financially to campaigns, went canvassing door to door or on the phone. You registered voters, you served as election officials or poll workers, and more and more. Thank you for anything and everything you did to support and encourage participation in our nation's democracy. So here we are with the midterm elections just days behind us. I have to confess that I'm not up on the news about Illinois, but up in Wisconsin, where I live, many of us are rejoicing that we re-elected our governor, Tony Evers, and we're grieving that Mandela Barnes did not beat Ron Johnson.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's how we feel. That's how we feel. Our nation's fate, while somewhat known, remains unknown. However, though the question of which party will control the Senate appears to have been solved with last night's announcement of the Democratic win in Nevada. But we still have the ongoing race for ultimate control of the House. And the new Congress will not be seated until January. In any case, that's why I decided to call this sermon after the end and before the beginning. So what's the most important thing for us to do while we journey through this liminal space between what was and what will be in terms of our nation's democracy? My sense is that one of the most important things we can do, besides continuing to offer our support in the unfinished races in whatever way we can, is to increase our understanding of our democracy. To that end, let me just say a little bit about where we Unitarian Universalists stand on democracy. One of the current principles that our congregations affirm is the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Our commitment to the democratic process is akin to our understanding of what it means to be a community held together by covenant. To be in a covenanted relationship as UUs means that we've promised to walk together in the spirit of love, and that spirit of love remains even when we fail each other. In terms of our commitment to democracy and society at large, it means that even when we are worn out by the acrimony and combativeness of political polarization, we hold on to the deep, powerful love that we know is at the heart of democracy. We know this and we hold on to it because democracy is the best way we know of to ensure that the people of our nation have even a prayer of having a voice in the decisions that affect them. It should come as no surprise then that our Unitarian Universalist Association has issued 8 statements or initiatives on issues critical to democracy over the past 60 years. Among other things, we've addressed ourselves to campaign finance reform, fair elections, and most recently, working to ensure voting rights and create multiracial democracy. So, I know you know that democracy is a form of government in which power is vested in the people and exercised by the people, directly or indirectly, through a system of representation. But the truth of the matter is that our American democracy was never intended to be fully government of the people, by the people, and for the people. While those so-called founding fathers, a significant number of them Unitarians, while they did not want their republic to be governed by a monarch, a hereditary ruler, they did want protection and power for the wealthy few. The checks and balances of our political system were put into place to prevent the unwashed majority, AKA all of us, from collective action that would give them real power, give us real power. Instead, elections would pit those with fame and resources against one another, and the 10 constitutional amendments that make up the Bill of Rights were put in place as kind of a social contract to prevent everybody else from the worst offenses of the powerful. That's kind of not what we're taught in school, but that's the way it is. The system worked well enough as long as America was resource rich and labor poor. Those lower down the success ladder could improve their lot at least a little through hard work. That's where that American bootstrap myth comes from. And, let it be known, that worked for those who were white. But today, because of the way our American political and economic systems are structured, our hard work doesn't get us far, and our real influence in politics is pretty limited. The aptly named 1% control our government, and they have for a long time, even before the Supreme Court's 2010 decision in Citizens United allowed corporations to make unlimited financial contributions to political campaigns. And so it goes on and on. Decisions continue to be made that keep the wealthy and powerful wealthy and powerful. For the rest of us, tough luck, babe. Living standards keep going down, higher education keeps getting more expensive, and our privacy rights and our civil rights and even our voting rights are being eroded, and climate change, which affects the entire planet, is continually being ignored. Yeah, lip service, small change, but mostly ignored. In our reading, Parker Palmer cautions us against cynicism. And I feel like I just dumped a big boatload of cynicism on you. But don't do it. Don't go there. And yet, Americans in general have become increasingly cynical about the value of democracy as a political system, and less hopeful that anything they do, Americans in general are less hopeful that anything we do can influence public policy. That comes from Yasha Monk, who's Associate Professor of International Affairs at Johns Hopkins University, and his colleagues Roberto Stefanfoa and Ronald Engelhardt. Their research draws on data from the World Values Study, a global research project that explores how people's values and beliefs change over time and what social and political impact those values and beliefs have. It's a study that's been running since 1981, and it measures, monitors, and analyzes support for democracy, tolerance of, quote, foreigners and ethnic minorities, support for gender equality, the role of religion and changing levels of religiosity, the impact of globalization, attitudes toward the environment, work, family, politics, national identity, culture, diversity, insecurity, and subjective well-being in 100 different countries. Global Values world values study. So, for example, when asked whether democracy is a good or bad way to run a country, in the mid-1990s, 9% of Americans said it was fairly bad or very bad. Today, a full 17% of Americans say democracy is fairly bad or very bad. Younger people were most likely to answer negatively about the value of democracy, and this anti-democratic attitude among young people has increased over time. In the mid-1990s, only about 1/6 of those ages 16 to 24 dismissed democracy, but now fewer than 1 in 3 Americans think living in a democracy is essential to their lives and well-being. That contrasts with the 66% of older Americans who have a deep allegiance to the democratic system and find it essential. Even more worryingly, the number of Americans who are open to straightforwardly authoritarian alternatives to democracy, while still low, has been growing at a rapid clip. 25 years ago, 1 in 15 Americans believed it to be a good or very good thing to have the army rule if government were to fail. And today, 1 out of every 6 Americans feels that way. And when you look at attitudes on elections, while 14% of baby boomers said it is unimportant in a democracy for people to choose their leaders in free elections, among millennials, 26% felt that people freely electing leaders was unimportant. Maybe even more telling, in a frightening kind of way, are American attitudes toward political violence as a solution to our nation's problems. For example, among Republicans who say that the health of our democracy is a critical issue, 33% say that true American patriots may have to resort to violence if that's what it takes to set things right. By contrast, among Democrats who say that the health of our democracy is a critical issue, only 7% say true patriots may have to resort to violence. If you want to learn much, much more about democracy and our attitudes to it, I recommend looking at the World Values Study, the Pew Research Center's studies, and the work of PRRI, the Public Religion Research Institute, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that conducts research where religion, culture, and public policy intersect. These studies are a treasure trove of information. And for me, I think it was, I went totally down the wormhole, I have to say, even just to pull out these few statistics. There are analyses and news articles that are available as well, and they're fascinating. But for me, it was, what I wanted to know was, how have things changed? How are people younger than me thinking about this? How are people older than me thinking about this? How does it break down along lines of religion, along other kinds of lines as well? And you can dive deep and find out that stuff. I also think that we'd find out a lot if we read Yascha Mounk's new book, The Great Experiment, Why Diverse Democracies Fall Apart and How They Can Endure. I have not read his book. I've read parts of it, but I think that would be pretty illuminating as well. But beyond learning, what else can we do and what else should we do? We who hold that the very purpose of politics is to work for the common good, and that democracy is a system with the potential to embody the transcendent experience that comes when our insistence on individual rights gives way to the need for collective action. What can and should we do? Yascha Mounk would encourage us to remember our own power. In the book, he notes that the deep commitment of ordinary Americans to liberal norms like the separation of powers is more important than even the system of checks and balances that are built into our democratic system. It is our love for democracy that is the final check on the tyranny of the majority, which our nation's founders feared. The book, Healing the Heart of Democracy, by Quaker author Parker Palmer, is an older book, but it's still useful. Palmer describes 5 habits of the heart he thinks we need to cultivate in order to sustain a healthy democracy. These habits of the heart are moral habits. They're values-based approaches that help us hold fast to our hope in good times and hard times. The first habit that he lists is one that we know well. It's to understand that we're all in it together, that we are interdependent one with another and with all forms of life. In terms of democracy, what this means is that we are dependent and accountable to one another, but also dependent upon and accountable to the stranger, the alien other. Because human beings are built to believe that ourselves end right here where our skin starts, we're never going to maintain a perfect awareness of interdependence. We think this is where we stop. But perfection's not the goal. The goal of that first habit, understanding that we are dependent upon each other, is to cultivate the second habit, which is an appreciation of the value of otherness. The second habit, that appreciating someone who is other than us, addresses the fact that most of us spend most of our lives with people who are like us, which can lead to thinking of the world in us and them terms. Our language just breaks down that way, us and them. But the good news is that us and them doesn't have to mean us versus them. Instead, it can remind us that the ancient tradition of hospitality means welcoming the stranger into your dwelling place, offering them refreshment and learning what they care about before you ever ask them where they come from or where they're going. It's a hospitality premised on the notion that the stranger has a lot to teach you. And if we can approach and accept that a stranger has a lot to teach us, the third habit comes into view, and that's the ability to live with tension in life-giving ways. That feels particularly important in the political climate of the United States today. The top 7 issues that the Public Religion Research Institute found that motivated voters in the midterms are these: abortion, crime, immigration, rising costs of goods and housing, the health of our democracy, gun access or gun safety, and climate change. So we know that these issues are regularly the focus of polarized debates. I know I've got my strong opinions about them. How about you? Anybody got a strong opinion about that stuff? Yeah. And our political parties have positions on them too, some of which reflect current law, and some of which reflect a commitment to pursue reforms in law. And because our democratic system is actually designed to allow for endless reform, endless reformation, that means the tension is just baked in. It's always going to be there. If we can cultivate Parker Palmer's third habit, the ability to hold tension in life-giving ways, we'll find ourselves encouraged to keep returning to the issues and have the freedom to continue to revise and refine our answers to them. The fourth habit that he talks about, the fourth values-based practice we need to cultivate, is developing a sense of personal voice and agency. And that dovetails with the fifth habit, which is to develop the capacity to build community. Because we know the steady companionship of even 2 or 3 kindred spirits can help us find the courage we need to use our voice and to take action, to speak out as citizens. Democracy flourishes when we are together supporting one another. The challenge of participation in a democratic society, then, is to stay in the conversation, to remain a part of the political process, and to keep using our powers to help bend the moral arc of the universe closer to our vision of equity and justice, while all the time remembering that our neighbors may have a different vision of equity and justice. This is the thing that Parker Palmer describes as living in the tragic gap. On one side of the gap is our present reality, and on the other side are the possibilities we are working toward. If we get overwhelmed by the pain of reality, as Dave noted in the reading, we can become mired in cynicism. And if we lose ourselves in the dreams of possibility, we become lost in idealism and we become ineffective. In the center, in the tragic gap, pulled but steady, we learn to live with the tension. The reading from Parker Palmer used different words for this, but the truth is that he calls the gap tragic because it's never going to close. He writes, "No one who has stood for high values, love, truth, justice, has died being able to declare victory once and for all." He continues, if we embrace values like those, we have to find ways to stand in that gap, not just now, but for the long haul. We're standing in the gap, my friends. Not just the tragic gap, but the gap between the end of the elections and the beginning for when those newly elected people take office and start to work toward change, one way or another way. Even with the gains that we've made in the midterm elections, I know many of us feel uneasy about what's coming for our nation. And I'm sorry, not sorry, that I probably made you more uneasy today. Yes, we can rejoice. And yes, we need to be informed so that when we move forward, we're moving forward from that place in the tragic gap, not from cynicism or idealism. You know, only when enough time has passed and we can see through the lens of history will we know the full meaning of our current era. And so, as Parker Palmer reminds us, here and now are the time and the place we have to act with hope. So in this moment and going forward, after the end and before the beginning, that's what we are called to do. I call myself and I call you to act with hope. Shalom, blessed be, Ashe, and Amen.
This is the time in the service when we invite each other to share our resources to continue the work of this church. Every month we share the collection plate with an organization that is doing work that's important in our community. And today, Marion Hanna Wilson will describe the work that's being done that we can contribute to today. And she has delegated Debbie Daniel Wayman.
I take that as a compliment. Thank you, Dave. I like being mixed up with Marion. Some of you may remember last spring we had a book fair downstairs to benefit a group called Books to Prisoners. They're an organization in Champaign, also connected with the UU Church there, but run independently, and they get letters from prisoners all over the state of Illinois, and they fulfill those requests and send out books free of charge to the prisoners. When we had that book fair, you all showed your amazing generosity and bought every book we had on the table, which wasn't the expectation. Yeah. One of the things that Kathy and Julia learned when they went down to the program to deliver the books that you all purchased was how difficult it is for them to fund the mailing of those books. People are pretty quick to donate their old books. You guys were terrific about donating the books they really get requests for that nobody donates, like How to Fix Plumbing. And so the other piece of their puzzle is how to fund the mailing of that. And that is why Kathy Blanford, who runs the Prison Pen Pal program here at UCH, asked for us to have one of our social justice collections this year go to support UCH Books to Prisoners, which funds, this collection will fund the mailing of those books to the prisoners. And one of the things that was so effective last spring when we had that book fair was Kathy read a letter from one of her prison pen pals named William Peoples, talking about his time in prison. And I have a letter that Kathy sent to me from William talking about what does it mean to an incarcerated human to receive a book in the mail. So this is William's words. These are William's words. Mail is passed out on the PM shift in prison every weekday after count. Those of us who live in cages wait expectantly, hoping someone thought of us and made that thought physically manifest in a letter, card, or package. But books are somewhat different. A book is a teleportation device. Within its covers is a whole nother world filled with exciting people and places. When an incarcerated human opens a book, they leave the place of pain, fear, loneliness, and deprivation, entering a world rich with imagery, ideas, people, and human interaction. Be it a novel or nonfiction, be it a love story, a thriller, or a mystery, it doesn't matter. For hours, the material world of steel, concrete, and barbed wire are gone, and you are wherever your imagination can take you. Books are not merely entertainment. We learn new ways of thinking, being, and perceiving the world, ourselves and others. Through books, I've sat with the Buddha, learned black feminist theory from bell hooks, and figured out how to compute quantitative data in statistics. To incarcerated humans, books are freedom and knowledge and can bring the incredible feeling of knowing someone somewhere cares about you and is invested in your cultivation and nurturance. In a word, books are love. So thank you for considering your donation today to the Books to Prisoners program. Reading has been shown to reduce recidivism in prison by over 30%. Thank you for your generosity.
If you contribute cash today, it will all go to the program. If you are making a pledge payment today, write UCH or pledge in the memo line. If you give a check and you want it to go to the program, write UU Books or Prison Books in the memo line. Let's say these words together. This church is made up of all of us. It is what we learn together, the work we do together, the fun we have together. It is what we share with one another. You should have it memorized by now. And let's delay for just a moment while we round up some plates to collect the collection.
Our closing words were adapted from something written by my colleague Monica Jacobson Tennyson. What is it that calls you here? What calls you onward? Calls you inward? What leads you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make that change, to ask that question, to take that journey? What is it that declares you have done well, that asks you to open up, to learn more? What is it that brings you to stillness and holds you up in hard times? It is the beating heart of our faith. Relationship. Relationship. Being together, journeying together, learning with and from one another. This is the heart of democracy, too, calling us onward always, alone and together, to do our part to create lasting peace, true equity, and justice for all. We extinguish our chalice with these words. As we prepare to close, I'd like to teach you a little song. But before I do, I want to say thank you to Maestro Jamie and to Worship Associate Dave, to host Anita, to Programs Director Pam, to those who were ushering, and to all of you for your presence here that creates this community. This is a little song called May the Wise Wind Lift You. Unitarian Universalists don't have enough good closing songs, so I wrote one, and Jamie's going to accompany. I'd like to sing it through. I don't know if it's on the screen. Do I do something for that, Dave? Push enter, maybe? Ooh, look at that. There it is. Okay, I don't even need that. I'll sing it through, and then how do we go back? The left arrow. Okay, cool. I'll sing it through for you, and then I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join in, and we'll sing it through a second time. May the wise wind lift you on its wings. May cool waters soothe your aching thirst. May the fire draw your people into a sacred circle. And may the earth be firm beneath your feet as you go forth now from this peaceful place, as you return into a world full of hope and pain. May this time we've had together fill your soul with pleasure and hold your heart on till we meet again. Easy, right? Please rise. Okay, let's do it. May the wise wind lift you on its wings. May cool waters soothe your aching thirst. May the fire draw your people into a sacred circle. And may the earth be firm beneath your feet as you go forth now from this peaceful place, as you return into a world full of hope and pain. May this time we've had together fill your soul with pleasure and hold your heart until we meet again.